Interesting one. The Electrical Vehicle Charging Act. Of course, the title tells you everything you need to know. I think it's all about electric vehicles. Hold on, Sebastian had a comment. Oh, okay, just read Sebastian's comment there. If he's basically saying, some of these immigrants and foreign nationals are the most amazing tenants ever, which I 100% agree. Okay, so let's take a look at what the new requirements are for electric vehicle charging. And before we get into what the new act says, I was a little bit curious because now you're going to have new requirements to provide electric charger type of things for your tenants and your properties. So I was kind of curious, are these people, legislators, just way ahead of their time? Is the demand for electric vehicles that much that we need to have a law now? So I did this out of just to satisfy my own curiosity. So I found some data. It's as of last year, so it's actually pretty current. So the number of electric vehicles in the US is pretty close to 2.5 million cars, which sounds like a lot, but it's not. It's really only 1% of all cars. This graph here was the only one I could find. It only goes to 2021, but you can see a pretty, what do you call it? A definite rise in electric vehicles over time and even more accelerated growth over time. Yes, it's been growing a lot. It's still not a ton of cars that are in demand for electric vehicles, but of course, we know that is going to continue to grow. And then just out of curiosity, again, I looked up, a couple of the states. The state that has the most electric cars, unsurprisingly, California, is still a small percentage, only 2.5% of their vehicles. The next highest ones are Florida, Texas. Illinois was not fourth. It's just, of course, I pulled it there for us because that's the one that is relevant to us. So 0.67 of cars in Illinois are electric vehicles. Still a really small percentage. So I don't know. Some landlords, and you'll see it also applies to developers, were kind of upset by this because they're saying we don't have enough cars, right now to need this. But I think it's a good idea to set it up for the future. And then I found a couple more little stats here to verify that. The Even though it's still only 2% of the car, excuse me, the entire car market there, the EV market still represents $49 billion in money in income there and revenue. There are 27 different automakers who are now making electric vehicles. I was pretty surprised by that. 38% of adults would consider buying an electric car as their new purchase. I mean, that's pretty good. If any of you guys have looked into EVs, there's lots of money available from the government to buy it, to offset the cost of some of these. So I think this is why the legislators felt like they probably should address it now. EVs are not going to go away. They're here to stay. They're going to grow over time. So it's better for us to plan ahead and be prepared rather than a lot of these laws where we're like, uh-oh, something's going on. We better just, slap a law together and force people to retroactively do things. It's better to plan ahead. Okay, so hopefully that gives a little bit of context for this whole electrical law that is now coming into effect. So it's the Electrical Vehicle Charging Act, Senate Bill, Public Act. So this is a brand new act. It was nothing in the Illinois laws about it before this. It's called the Electrical Vehicle Charging Act. And they actually do a really nice job of specifying in the law what they wanted to accomplish by this new act. Commendably, they're saying they wanted to fight climate crisis, tackle air pollution, provide safe, clean, and affordable transportation. So it's, climate change, it's going to impact positively what's going on in our world. But also they wanted to offer tenants an opportunity to charge some of their electrical vehicle at home, especially the multifamily tenants, because it's really difficult for them. Most, if not, yeah, I would say most of the EV charging is geared towards and is only available for homeowners. So they want tenants to be able to take advantage of it as well. And the law already went into effect. So let's take a look at what's going on with that. The act applies to owners, landlords, homeowner associations, and tenants. This is specifically outlined in the law. They absolutely want tenants to take advantage of it. It only applies to fully electric vehicles. So in other words, electricity is the only source of power. So if your tenants have hybrids or they got an electric bicycle, whatever, nope, sorry, it doesn't apply to that. It's only fully chargeable, plug-in type cars. That's important. I was very happy with this because it also addressed the HOAs. I would use a curse word, but I'm trying to keep it, PG rated here. Those dang HOAs want to try to ban everything and rule everything. And fortunately, this act says, nope, can't do that. This supersedes any HOA rule that bans the EV spots there. These HOAs can still have reasonable restrictions, but they have to follow all these act rules. So I was very pleased that these HOAs can stick it where, And now we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the different aspects of the law because there are different rules that apply to new construction versus rentals. Okay. Somebody had a little chat thing here. Paul says, can I go back one slide? Absolutely. Let's come on. So that one. So it applies to owners, landlords, homeowner associations, and tenants, and it applies to fully electric vehicles only. Tawana says, Tawana, when you send me a message privately, it stops sending it to the entire group. So don't forget in the little poll down there to make sure it's directed to everybody, because Tawana says, who's responsible for the electric bills? We're absolutely going to get to that in the next slide or two. So I'll answer your question here. I'm going to breeze through the new construction because I don't think a lot of us are involved in new construction, but I just wanted you guys to be aware that, man, they have really laid a strict plan for any new construction. So single family homes, small multifamily homes that have dedicated parking, every one of those spots has to be EV capable. Now, they do have a couple of different rules for affordable housing, but wow, I mean, that is pretty ambitious. Any new construction, every one of the spots has to be EV capable. Diane is asking, is this saying landlords must install electric chargers? Nope. Give me one more slide for the new construction, and I'll go over what the rentals requirements are. We are absolutely not required to install EV chargers for the tenants. You are, however, if you're a developer, you're going to be building some new construction, you are required to have some EVs spots. And then there's some other requirements for new construction for the really big buildings with dedicated parking. Same thing, 100% of the spaces have to be EV capable, but they're giving them a little time to phase it in. And there's just a ton of rules that these developers have to follow. But of course, I didn't want to waste time in our presentation. All right, so now let's take a look at what is required for us in the rentals. And Diane, this is where your question comes in, and Tawana, both of your questions come in. So this pointer, what the law is saying is that the tenant may install an electric vehicle charging system. It's called EVCS for short. I'm just going to call it the system inside or outside the property. So what the law is saying is tenants do have a right to install their own charging system inside or outside the property. It has to be for their private use. So they can't then set it up and then start charging others for it. And the tenant has to pay for this. We don't pay one single penny for this, nor do we even have to allow it. The law also says, the act, says that the charging system belongs to the tenant. It's the private property of the tenant. So if you give them permission to install it and they move out, they can take it with them. They can sell it to you. They can sell it to another tenant, whatever it is they want to do to it, but it's not yours. Just because you give them permission to install it on your property doesn't mean that it's automatically yours. So this is something you're going to have to take a look at your lease clause. There's a lease clause in almost I think probably in every lease I've ever seen. I probably should have looked for it, but it basically is something like if the tenant, attaches something to the property that is permanent, it belongs to the landlord. So if you allow the tenant to build a built-in bookcase, that thing is yours. This does not apply to the charging system. Even though they're permanent, they always are the private property of the tenant. Now, the tenant just can't automatically, one day the charging system is installed. They absolutely have to meet certain requirements. And fortunately for us, all of these requirements, this entire electrical charging act is definitely in our landlord's favor. So we got a victory with this one. So let's take a look at that. What we can say, can allow and not allow. So the landlord has absolute rights on the design specifications for the installation. So in other words, the tenant approaches you with their, hey, I want to install the system. You can say, you can put it here. You can't put it here. I want a black one. I don't want a white one. You must hide it, blah, blah, blah. Whatever requirements you want, you have an absolute right to do so, whether the tenant agrees with them or not. The other right that we have is that we can demand for us to control the installation. Or what this means is you can give the tenant the right to have an EV system, but you tell them, okay, as a condition of me allowing you to have the system, I'm going to install it. So I'm going to hire the contractor. I'm going to pull the permits. I'm going to, do whatever. I'm going to pay for it and you're going to pay me back, or whatever type of installation requirements you want. Tenant has to agree. Otherwise, too bad, so sad. The other requirement that we can impose is that we can require additional insurance to cover the potential for harm or damage as a result of these EV chargers. And we can add the coverage in one of two ways. We can require that the tenant get renter's insurance, and then the requirement for them is then within 14 days of us, the landlord saying, yep, okay, you can do it. The tenant has to give you a certificate of insurance that names us as an additional insured. Or we could then tell the tenant, I'm going to add this EV charging unit to my insurance. If there's any increase in my premium, you got to pay for it, and they have to give us the money, within 14 days. This is really important, and you don't want to neglect this. You want to have insurance on there because it's going to protect us landlords from any installation problems or damages. The contractor screws up and there's a big old hole in the side of your house. Any maintenance items associated with the system. And then let's say, I'm completely making this up. I have no idea. Let's say the EV system causes a fire and, there's damage. It will cover you for any EV related issues there. Paul says, what about condo associations where you have rentals? Are condo associations required to provide these charging stations, or is the same rule for each condo owner? So it's going to depend, Paul, on what your condo rules say.